Hello! This hangout is live on air thanks to Google Hangouts. Today, for OreAni, we welcome you all for our third installment of the end of the summer season. Instead of having our usual group, we just got pt.3
Hey,
and Nick with us
Yo.
because they're the only ones who have actually watched anything else. I mean, I could probably help with only two other titles, but other than that, I have no idea what else is going on.
well, Nick will do a lot of talking today.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, so we're counting on you, Nick. We're counting on
Oh,
you.
man.
You can do it.
I can do it, but I just wish it would have a more serious attempt at pulling this off. I haven't really reflected on a lot of the series, so but we're gonna do our best here. Let's do this.
Yep. Yeah. I believe in you guys. You know? Believe in the me that believes in you and stuff.
I don't think you do believe in me, in all honesty.
Alright, so let's see here. What's our first title we got lined up? It's Jinsen. A life advice animation or TV animation show. Very popular opening with the whole skirt fluttering around as they wiggle their hips and everything. I've seen them quite a few times on a GIF. It's kind of hypnotizing.
The endings were a little more memorable. They varied the endings a lot, so you had a various, I guess, voice actor took an ending per episode, and there's probably several of them by the end of it, and moderately catchy, but not a great song on its own.
Was it like each new character they introduced, they kind of had a part in that song?
I don't think they had a new part. I think they literally just sang the song with a new VA or something providing the lyrics. I don't think parts were addition, just major parts were changed.
Well, I know at least for one of them, they showed that painter girl, and then in the ending, it actually had her in there. So I'd have to go back and check them all out. But unfortunately, I didn't finish this title. It seemed to come out really slow for the subbing. I don't know if it was really slow or if it was just a subbing issue, but
I'm under the impression it had release issues and not subtitling issues, but I'm not 100% sure. So yeah, this anime is actually kind of crazy, really intrinsic to how we do things here at OreAni, and essentially this club, as we may have explained in the first episode, would take various requests from students and sit in almost a roundtable discussion and come up with a solution to this one's problem. And our main character would take all three of their advices, if you will, and make some semblance out of their random comedic acts and provide an actual interesting tidbit of life advice, which was pretty nice. But the show did really hinge in the comedy of each of the characters and their kind of personality quirks. But I gotta say, I did stick with it, and I watched it, but I'd say it kind of performed somewhat averagely. The roundtable discussion bits didn't make for an interesting animation. You'd see kind of characters sitting around a table most of the time. When they actually got out and do stuff, that's when it was actually pretty interesting to me. But those moments were every other episode, and there's a lot of chaotic sensibilities amongst these characters, and that was the quirks that kind of made them unique and was supposed to kind of draw you to the show, I felt. So I don't know, Tripoli, what did you take away from this one?
The bike scene. I think that's the most memorable moment on the show when someone tries to bike on a bike when he has never biked before. And that scene was kind of memorable a lot for me, and one of the few scenes I still remember as I haven't watched it for like 5 weeks. Um, but I think the rest of the show was enjoyable, at least, as we have, let's say, a rival coming up in episode 3 or 4, and they try to kind of, yeah, fight against them, but it's kind of useless because they are useless in different ways. But the round table discussions are, uh, well, not that interesting, but these moments when they get to real life, checking out their recommendations is like, well, this show can be enjoyable and a lot of fun.
All right, so
Yeah.
I see that you have it marked as not finished. Was there a reason you didn't finish, or okay?
No, I didn't finish it in the last weeks. Didn't have any time except for watching everything else in the new season.
All right, so I haven't finished it myself. Like I said, there were some issues with the releasing. I thought I didn't know why, but it seemed to be released very slowly. And by
I
the
think,
time it got to the end, I think that's just the only reason why I haven't finished it because I was tired of waiting
yeah, I
until.
think FFF is kind of slow on that thing. It was like very slow on that thing.
But other than that, I found it very enjoyable. I had a lot of pretty funny moments. Um, like my favorite moment was when he got his voice changed. He was fighting that secret organization HHH. That was just totally great part. So
Yeah, like I said, when they got out of the classroom and were kind of messing with their advice, is the moments of like redemption for the show. But I just did have issues like listening to their discussion as a, I can't understand Japanese natively, and they would usually talk at such a pace where it was hard to kind of keep track of what was going on at the scene and try to keep up with what they're saying. So.
yeah. So is there anything else you guys want to add to this, or should we move on to the next title?
The spike scene was amazing. Please, more of this. This was kind of the cutest thing I've seen that season.
No, I'd say it's a pretty average title, and if you can't really get into the comedy it outputs, I would not recommend kind of picking it up. But if you kind of like the moments of comedy it does have, and could kind of put up with the roundtable discussion, which would probably be a lot more interesting for people who know Japanese, then I could see like the average anime viewer, or maybe not the average, but the avid anime watcher may not select this as a title. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and move on to another title, which has an easy target group. What do you call this? Seirei, Sky, crap. No Blade Dance. So this one's easy to know who to recommend this to. People like Mike, who
Yeah.
love etchiness and
My
all sorts of
short
stuff.
comment.
I think, yeah. So to Mike, this is his type of show. I bet he's even watched it, read the manga and everything. I know he has talked about it quite a bit,
Possibly.
about the light novels and such. But this was another title I haven't finished. I think I'm a few episodes to the end, but
Well, my
Yeah.
little comment to the show: don't pick it up if you don't like generic harem anime. That's my feeling. After the last OreAni session about this anime, I kind of watched another episode of this and I just couldn't get into it.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. To some extent, I find it a little bit more pleasing than something like Infinite Stratos as an early comparison I kind of made to it. While we do have like a denser main character, he's not quite as bad as Ichika and his blatant denseness. But the realm that it kind of depicted, I actually had a tough time just kind of getting used to with the various amounts of spirits that were apparently around, and how much you could train your own spirit to become strong / attempt to get in it natively strong spirit was kind of odd, and um, it's kind of weird how like our main protagonist is never really explained. We know that in the first few episodes he was a fairly good elementalist who has partaken in tournaments in the past. I'm going to try to leave out his results for anyone picking up the story, however. And he's in it for a second time at this point, and he never really says why. So as we're watching this whole series, we don't really know what the ends to his means are, and there's characters who aren't really explained too well in it. It does kind of end in a suggest there could be a potential season 2 because not a whole lot got resolved. I think it literally ended mid-tournament. Like they just did like a semi-final fight, and we haven't even got to the finals yet, and we have an ending episode. So there's potential for a second season here. I'm just not quite sure when, and it's a little harem-y / action. I can see it not recommending it. If you happen to pick it up and liked where it was going in the first few episodes, you pretty much know what to expect for it all the way through, because it doesn't really cover a whole lot of distance. So.
Mm-hmm. So I would like to say it did tone down on the etchiness a little bit, but then I just remembered they did have a lot of scenes in the bathroom. So.
A lot of scenes in the bathroom. He had a lot of scenes with his sword.
Yeah. So, especially those who are against lolly, I would say. This is not your show. Because it has a lot of petite girls, very young looking. Of course, they say that she's over 400 and stuff because she's a sword or something like that. Some of the years, right? So, but some of these moments just really awkward.
Yeah, it's pretty awkward. I'd never seen thighs as discussed so much in an animation before. I think this is the one of the most characters hellbent on asking about their thighs.
Mm-hmm. But the show does have that tsundere character that some people tend to like. Well, that type of character. I don't know. She just wasn't that good enough for me, I guess I would say. But some people just like her.
Did she have the twin tails of the tsundere character type?
I don't know.
You can't even remember.
I just remember her hair is long and red.
Yeah, she didn't do like a full twin tail. I think what she had is long red hair with like 2 sub twin tails tied up in a bow on the side, but like her hairstyle was not pure twin tail. It was some mix.
Greatness awaits. It can't be that
Yeah.
good.
There are better twin tail shows out there. Is that what you're saying?
Oh yes. Like the one that is airing right now. The first
That
episode
one's fun.
smashes everything that was there before.
So the only thing I can say about this show is, unless you like etchiness and lollies and
And
maybe a
Soras.
few little battle scenes, you can pick this up. Hopefully, Mike can tell us all about it next time.
But I will actually discuss a little bit about its ending right now. While its ending is not necessarily immaculate, it was actually kind of special in the realm of openings and endings, I think, because it was actually kind of an otaku-centric ending, where the lyrics "knee-high fight" was put to the tune of almost what sounded like an Irish jig, and there was lots of scenes of knee-high service in the ending animation of this, and I don't know if I've ever seen like such a thematic ending lyric ever, but while the show may not be great, I just might say it might be worth it just to watch just once and be like, yeah, that was pretty meh, but at least I watched it and it's out of the way now.
I'd say spend your time on better anime.
Hey, it's an ending. It's a minute 30. Come on.
Just
You
watch
can watch
the
it
ending.
short in
Everything
time.
else can be skipped.
I don't know. I think shorts at least run 2 minutes, if not 3.
All right, let's go ahead and move on.
Yeah.
Let's see here. We did Free last week, right?
Yeah, I think we discussed. Yeah, we did definitely discussed Free.
Did we talk about Tokyo Ghouls?
I don't think so.
Wow, we didn't.
I don't know. That's what I'm asking. It's something I never even give a shot. I don't think I
Tokyo
got
Ghoul.
5 minutes into the first episode.
Why did you not watch Tokyo Ghoul, you horrible, horrible person?
We had
I don't
kind
know.
of.
It just I didn't have the
I
feeling.
think a
for it.
lot
I
of
just-
people didn't really watch it. Holy cow.
Yeah, I've kind of
Go
watched
ahead and tell us about it.
Tokyo Ghoul was actually a title that kind of took me by surprise, and at times it would leave me anticipating the next episode. It's like I wouldn't want that anticipation of the next episode. I just want it to be released now. While we heard lots of feedback from our anime streams about them condensing the content it attempted to cover too much, and read the book is much better. As someone who has not read the book, or probably will never, I just wanted to say it actually did really surprise me as far as what it tried to cover. While angst may not have been its central point, it did have quite a few moral conflicts of a main character who was forced to see two halves of this world that was almost purely seen as black and white before. And in the first season, he kind of sets out on a pathway to try to bring an understanding to both sides. But I would just love the sheer moments of like combat drama that this series would induce, and at times it would look extremely well animated during combat scenes, particularly. And I'm kind of surprised not a whole lot of us have actually watched it, because this was one of the more popular titles, I kind of felt. So, I don't know how much content is out there for... Oh, give us a moment here as we establish another member, because I know this person has seen it.
Yeah, I saw her.
Good.
I'm a little late on the what do you call that, replies, but we got Jessica joining us. Thankfully, she's seen Tokyo Ghouls.
Hi.
So I was attempting to kind of rudimentarily explain what Tokyo Ghoul attempted to cover, and I was wondering how you viewed Tokyo Ghoul, since that is a series I think you enjoyed.
Oh, me? Yes. I really liked that one a lot. I think because it's seinen, so it's a little more adult than the typical shonen action we gotta fight against the monsters series. And I liked that the main character had to slowly learn how to fight, and that his training wasn't just one episode and he's on par with everybody else. He took several episodes to learn how to fight well, but even that it was mostly dodging. And so I thought that was more realistic than the normal training montages that you see. And I really do want to read the manga. I liked it so much, and I couldn't wait for each episode to come out on a week-by-week basis. It was just torture to have to wait.
Yeah, it almost it didn't feel like it left on an intense cliffhanger, but just enough of a cliffhanger to really make you want to wrap your head around what was going to happen in the next episode. Sometimes it was a pretty steep cliffhanger, but most of the times you just didn't want it to stop where it currently was. Not because there was a big revelation around the corner, but just because you'd immediately want the next part of the story. And yeah, that actually kind of reminded me about something. Our character kind of had a very unique viewpoint. While he was going under combat training, he was actually very held back as far as being confrontational, and that was actually all explained in the last episode, which was kind of odd to me because I didn't even notice that. And after that revelation hit, I kind of reflected back onto him as a character, and despite having combat abilities and not stepping in where he could have, I could kind of understand those situations a little bit better. But I felt that it was rather sudden to reveal it just in the last episode. But it was an interesting perspective and kind of hard to explain to people of his temporary outlook on life, his reasoning that he inherited from his mother.
The last two episodes were very difficult to watch. The brutality that was shown in those. I watched them back to back, and it was whew. I needed something sweet and happy to chase that.
Was it Puri Para, perchance? No. I know.
Yeah, I haven't seen the show, but I'm kind of sad that I wasn't able to. I'm kind of sad that I didn't see it because it seemed to be pretty well liked. It seemed to be watched by a lot of people. But I actually don't know like what the show is specifically. And Jessica, you started like off the bat talking about how he had to evolve to become a good fighter or something.
Mm-hmm.
Is it like a battle of the week kind of thing, or what is he doing when he's not fighting? Is he trying to live a normal life, or is it?
He is. He's torn between the duality of the self, where he has the human part that he's comfortable with, and then he has the ghoul part, which simultaneously terrifies and horrifies him. But then there's just a little bit of a part of him that wants to give in to the ghouliness, and so most of the times when he's not fighting, it's just him in denial, trying to live as normal a life as possible, and then grappling with all of the ghoul side of himself. So he. Sorry.
Is there like a school life and an underworld or something like that?
Not really. He's in college.
He goes to college. Okay.
Yeah, he's in college, and they just mention it. He has, I think, one friend in college, and then a senpai who's a little bit on the mean side at first. But you don't really see a whole lot of his college life. It's mostly him in the restaurant. He gets a part-time job working at a cafe that's owned and run and operated all by ghouls that are trying to live, I don't want to say symbiotically, but at least not harm the living human populace.
But are they out in the open? Like, do other people know that they're ghouls? Or
yes, that was another thing that I liked about the series, is that most of the populace knows what ghouls are. is it's not something that has to be hidden by the government. But if you are a ghoul, you don't want other people to know about it.
There's this whole police task force that hinges upon finding identities of ghouls and eliminating them. They almost treat ghouls as a form of zombieism, where they are an abnormal creature who needs to be dealt with, and despite any human mentalities they may exhibit, they are utterly a monster who just should not be around. So they seek to eliminate ghouls as soon as possible, as soon as they sniff them out. So while the populace does know what ghouls are, the ghouls have a very strict society of no normal human should know their identity, because it's basically a loose end that, you know, could lead to a whole shop's downfall.
And the premise is that the ghouls have to eat human flesh, right?
Yes, it's the only thing that tastes good to them. Kaneki,
Except coffee.
Except for coffee, for no weird reason. But Kaneki goes through his denial period where he tries to eat human food, and the ghoul biology makes them feel ill, and they end up vomiting it all up, the normal food, if they try.
So is that like an intractable problem? Like they have to kill other people and there's no way around it?
Well, our friends get around it by harvesting the bodies of suicide victims. So they're scavengers. But most of the ghouls don't look at it that way. They do kill people.
Yeah.
But they have been forced to take the mentality of, it's kind of like people eating animals in a sense. We don't acknowledge people as animals, but, you know, people like their steak, people like their pork, and it's kind of the same. It's just a dietary necessity that has arisen, and as much as you don't want to look at the gruesome side of you're killing someone and ending their life, and they had loved ones and whatever else they may have had ahead of them, ultimately it's the only food source you can survive off of, so it had to be done. They kind of had this, certain members who wish they could have had normal food had that such a grim outlook.
They're obligate carnivores.
So is this group trying to achieve something? Like, are they trying to learn how to cure their condition, or?
No, they're just
It's
trying
just
to get by
about
day by day.
Yeah.
Blend into society, so to speak.
Yeah, that sounds pretty grim.
It is, but it's good, and it has lots of sakuga in it, so I think it's worth your while.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know Hironori Tanaka, who's like my favorite animator, has done several action bits in it. I might check it out. So does it set itself up for a sequel? Like, do you think there will be one?
Oh, yes. I think they announced one, didn't they? That they're doing a second cour?
I can't keep track of some certain series that announce it at the end. I'm sure this one will. I just couldn't estimate a time frame at all, is all. And if they did announce one, I just didn't remember it was for this particular series.
Mm.
Alright, cool. I guess that answers all my questions about Tokyo Ghoul.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes. They did announce a sequel series. It's going to premiere in January.
All right. For those who didn't know, that was Sean. Came in, came out. All right, let's go on to the next title. You guys okay with that?
Mm-hmm.
The next title, which quite a few, or at least I know, what's his name, Nick, really wanted me to talk about.
Why would I really want you to talk about this?
I don't know. You kept on talking to me about it. You wanted to hear about it. Love Stage? Okay. So, this was a very, very short show, and it was a very, very awkward show for me, because I think this is what Nick was wanting to hear about, because I saw this with a family member of mine,
No.
my mother, and
Well, I didn't mean it for it to like necessarily hit OreAni or anything. I was just asking in general. How did that go?
well, I don't mind discussing this. I mean, I was surprised by the content, and some moments I was like, oh my gosh. Oh, well, I can't believe I'm watching this. And then I'm like feeling kind of double embarrassed because my mother's watching it with me. So I'm like, so I don't know how to feel when I'm, but she enjoyed it for the most part at the beginning, and then kind of didn't like it near the end. It just got really strange, but for people who don't know, this show is like super yaoi.
It's super to an extent. It has its moments, but for the most time, it's kind of halfway tame. Kind of.
When I mean super yaoi, I mean by that I mean it's just not insinuating it. I mean it actually, the deed is done. And you know it's done. But it just during those moments when it's trying to happen, it's kind of just really, really.
Yeah, I remember how it got in the last few episodes, and that was pretty something else. But let me just start by saying, for an anime whose opening ends with two guys holding hands, you know hopefully where it's going. And while that didn't necessarily depict what scenes we were going to see in the animation, we did watch it knowing what it was going to be about. And in all honesty, I gotta say, it was my first time watching an animation of this topic, and it wasn't that bad, in my opinion, depending on how your view on certain things is. But it had a pretty good comedic side, and you know, our main character who aspires to be like this manga artist who draws this Picasso art that, like, you know, it's like you just being a human being means you have to draw better than that. Like that's just like an obvious comedic hit. But and having like a magical girl series integrated in it, almost like something out of OreAni. So yeah, it got pretty yaoi in the end, I would say, but it actually made for some interesting reactions to people who are not used to that, because I was showing some of those scenes to people, and then they were like, "What is this?" And you just had to laugh along with them, like, "Yeah, that just happened." Yeah.
All right, just real quick. I hope I didn't give off the wrong impression. Like, I'm not saying the show is bad. I mean, it was enjoyable. Just saying because of the situation I was put in when I was watching this, it was kind of awkward. But oh my God, I love the way they drew the females.
Yeah.
Especially him, right?
Right, when he
that was a very nice character
when he was
design.
forced to cross-dress.
And I actually almost never. Yeah, and I almost never picked up this title, except for the GIFs people were posting around with him trying to draw, and like it doesn't turn out right, and then also the pictures of that one female. I was like, who is this? What is going on?
Izumi's eyes are beautiful. That purple and gold color, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Very arresting.
Yeah, a lot of people said they really wished he was a female character. Especially if you weren't into yaoi stories. Like, I could admit, as a watcher, I really did hope that was like a female-oriented character and not like a cross-dresser. But it was done in a lighthearted way, in aspect to why he was forced to cross-dress. That was a pretty nice story, and I just mean, I hope people would attempt to watch this. Now, if it's not your cup of tea, obviously drop it right away, but I wouldn't drop it just because of the content it covers. Heck, being an anime viewer almost makes me kind of happy when I'm put into a form of like culture shock, because I don't know, maybe it's just this like grand desensitization plan that I have for myself or something, and just becoming used to everything. But I did enjoy watching this title. While I can't exactly know what the character's going through, it was an interesting watch.
What I really didn't care for was when Ryoma assaults Izumi. And I'm not a yaoi fan, and that's really one of the reasons I'm not a yaoi fan, because at least every yaoi anime I've tried to watch, usually one of the characters forces himself on the other character. And I don't find that appealing because it instantly makes one of the characters unlikable. And so anyway, that happened, and I wasn't sure if I was going to continue, but a lot of people said, oh, you should, it's a really good show. So I did, because I'm suggestible. And what bothered me is that Izumi told Ryoma, okay, if we're going to be friends, let's just be texting buddies. And he set up all of these ground rules, and Ryoma's all, yeah, that's totally okay. We can do that. And then Ryoma violates every single one of those ground rules that Izumi put in place. So there's no establishment of trust in this relationship. And Ryoma seems to be more obsessed with Izumi than actually in love with him. So I don't feel that the romance is depicted in a healthy manner, I guess. Mm. So but I take things very seriously, so if you're the kind of person that can just watch it on the surface, it's a pretty enjoyable show. Like everyone said, it was really funny, it's well animated, it's really pretty to look at, and it's the only yaoi anime I've ever been able to finish, so that points in that corner, I guess.
I mean, I do know. What do you think about the Triplett?
Well, I've not watched a lot of it, only one third. But as it was not the first experience of yaoi to me, as I've got a yaoi collection on my 18 plus hard drive. Yeah, it was not really disturbing, but it could be a good watch for people that like this kind of stuff. It's not, especially for me, it's not let's say something I enjoy to watch, but the concept and art was kind of good enough for people that don't like yaoi at all to follow this show. That is something that every yaoi show is can do.
Yeah, and just to kind of go with like Jessica's statement earlier of setting the ground rules, at some point halfway throughout the series, I think Izumi kind of implied that some of them didn't matter anymore, but it's kind of questionable at that point. But where I thought you were honestly coming from at times was like near the end of our main character, Izumi, acquired a bit of fame and became kind of this public icon. And where I thought you were kind of coming from when you were making like comments like that at first is, how they represented kind of like public mob response to seeing a famous person, or even if like just if he was a random stranger off the street. There were some random passerby scenes that I thought were pretty out there, but and that's what I thought you were kind of coming from, and I didn't realize it was like singled out against like Ryoma. Is all I wanted to say.
Well, I think it's because he's supposed to be a love interest, and so that really, how to say it? I think that really made him not a good candidate for a love interest. If someone is forcing himself on another person, then that kind of puts the kibosh on a healthy relationship right there, because no is no. Granted, he didn't go all the way, but it really made it difficult for me to like Ryoma.
Gotcha.
And I don't know if that's something that's just ever present in the genre, but it was like that in Junjo Romantica too. I stopped watching because of that. It's just not something I think is... It's shown in almost a positive way, and that's what bothers me more than it being shown at all. Does that make sense?
No, I understand.
The only thing I have to say that I disliked about this show, besides the obvious, was the brother's voice. His voice kind of annoyed me. And but his reactions and the way he was just totally there for you was really great and funny. And then with the Ryoma added into the mix, it added to that. But I just wish his voice was different.
Wish.
The whole wish thing. Oh, irritating me.
What was that like hand gesture thing? Like
like this? I don't know.
I think he like did.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. So, you guys have anything else to add to this, or shall we move on? Let's move on to Local Doll. I think the whole title's Futsu no Joshikose ga yatte mita?
Yeah, but it does come with the bracketed Loco before the yatte mita too.
Yeah. So, if anyone out there watching this, if you know Japanese and can say these titles for me, please join. I'm killing it.
I think it's Futsu no Joshikose ga Lokodo yatte miru. Or yatte mita.
Yeah.
So, this was a show that I picked up only to fill in the void at work with my phone, since it was just there on Crunchyroll. And I actually really got into it, and it was pretty enjoyable after a while. I know Nick is excited about this show.
Well, kind of. Ultimately, my experience with Loco Roll ended up being I was enticed by its premise. I kind of liked how we had like the raw feeling and expressionism come off the main character, but then like episodes 2 and beyond kind of went a slightly different angle. It just didn't feel like the premiering episode. While it was enjoyable, especially towards the end, when we got to see a lot more of their idol activities, because it was kind of gray early off. They are not your run-of-the-mill idols, which has been kind of made abundantly clear. While they do public shows, they also go out to local, like local restaurants or businesses, and try to advertise them to the rest of the town and possibly outside world with their idol antics. And so they're kind of like a government-employed idol group at that. It's usually idols are trained by or enlisted by a talent scout into some sort of weird business corporation style scheme where they just try to make money out of this idolism. The government kind of had a different angle with these girls, so I think that kind of made the show feel different for me, because it wasn't the typical idolism show, and
So I kind of get what you're saying. You're kind of like, instead of them trying to go out for fame, it's them trying to show how great their city is.
yeah,
Rather than
and the
saying
slice
how
of
great we
life
are.
moments in between too. So that kind of made this one stand off a little different from a lot of most idol shows out there. And I guess since there wasn't a wide venue of music and like lots of flashy shows, I just wasn't aware that the pacing was going to be as slow, and it didn't make for a bad story. Just I didn't quite get a good grasp of where it was going early off, so I kind of had to readjust later, personally. And I mean, who else here watched this one, out of curiosity?
I did. Not the whole thing, though. No, I thought the show was really good and super cute, and I liked it, but I had other shows competing for my time, and so since I wasn't enamored with it, I had to drop it. But I definitely would recommend it to people that like the moe type stuff, because it's very sweet, and I had a smile on my face throughout the entirety of the episodes. Is that they make you feel better than when you first sit down on the couch to watch it, and that's not something that every series can do. They're just so cute, those designs.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're saying as well. I mean, there's this one moment when I was watching the show, and they had that newcomer, and she was trying to explain how to be Umuro-kun or whatever his name was. And she's all like,
wait. You don't know how to say his name?
That.
You don't know how to say his name? I believe it goes something to the tune of...
Yeah.
That guy?
So,
that's who you were talking
just that
about, right?
moment, which, yes, at the moment she was trying to tell her how to be that character, just her faces, Saban. It's just so cute to me.
Yeah, it definitely has those moe moments, and to kind of go back through the cast of characters, it follows our main character, Nanako, who commonly mispronounces her name on live televised or staged microphone events where she goes Nyanyako. So she kind of gets a little cat sound in there, but she's kind of the main character of the show, and the second idol, who I think was actually an idol before she was, but she's more of a sub-character, is the Yukari-san, who kind of actually idolizes Nanako a little bit. There's a little past history there, but actually not too much. And later we do have the Uogokuro-kun, sorry, a little bit of a tongue twister for me, who was first fleshed out by the high school senpai who was made into a kohai, Yui. And we did have a second character for Uogokuro-kun come about halfway through the series, of the name Mirai, and her introduction actually rekindled my interest in the show. I really did like her as a character, and how like the two kind of had to work together, and I guess I liked her personality type added to the blend. So.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get the screenshot. I just love that scene that I was talking about. Triple A, did you watch any of it?
Nope, nothing. Not even a single episode.
Not even one? Aww.
Not even one.
Anyway.
I might pick it up when I don't have enough to do in the fall season, but I doubt.
Yeah, it's generally it wasn't the most enticing show out, but if you have something you just want to get like a little more anime viewed and maybe want a lighter story, this would be a decent one. So. Yeah, but even as far as like the music goes, I think we alternated between like two main songs that these characters would sing, and they came up with one on their own for the finale, which was interesting, but I'm used to kind of idol shows having like usually like a boastful lineup of at least like 7 or maybe 5 kind of different songs. So this one definitely centered around a lot more local lifestyle than it did pure idolism. So, but it was actually kind of interesting because we had idol groups who met up with our local doll group. Like they were all necessarily called local dolls for whatever reason, but the corporate business side of the idol industry did not necessarily know what to expect from our government-employed local dolls, and they actually had a little bit of envy in how these characters were revered by their city eventually for doing all the city work that they did, or at least advertising and publicizing it, or publicity, sorry, not publish, but it was kind of interesting to see like an idol point of view of I wish we could kind of go back to like to the grassroots and help where we started from. So that was a perspective introduced much later.
So real quick, yeah, there's one of the scenes when she's trying to explain to her how to be pushy, whatever. But just these moments were just so cute to me.
Attempting to explain how to be the character with like sound effects and gestures alone.
Yeah. Oh man, when I saw these faces, I just had to keep on rewinding it and watching it. It was just, I don't know. Shall we go to the next title, or do you guys want to have it add anything else?
I think I'm good.
All right. The next one is The Terrible Show.
What? No.
Well, I thought it was terrible from episode 1.
It's
great.
actually pretty decent.
Okay. Go ahead and try to defend it. But to me,
Take it away, Triply.
terrible.
Well, I must say, as I've written at least 2 reviews on Anime Talk, yeah. At the first OreAni, we said that this will be the most generic stuff coming up this season. Like a little boy gets a new shiny mecha that kind of is the OPest thing in the world. And, well, that's true in the first 3 episodes. He's kind of like...
Well, hang on one second here, Triply. I'm not going to like cut you off or anything, but I do at least want to say that this is a 2-core runner, so we're part way through of the second core. We're kind of starting that one. So we have not reached a resolution with this guy yet, but from our mid-season perspective, here's what it is.
Well, not even from the mid-season perspective, but from the perspective from the first 3 to 4 episodes. So the first arc, where every character is introduced. The main character is just like, well, mama boy, who knows? In a strange way, yeah. He gets a new shiny mecha, don't know how to use it, how to fight in the mecha. War just broke out between 2 countries because of resource fighting. And yeah, that's kind of thing happening. He's in a group, the Independent Unit 8, which is kind of like the pro special forces and who knows which army, countering everything that the enemy throws at them. But they kind of have to retreat at the start of the anime because the main forces of the enemy are swarming into the country of theirs. Yeah. Their country's technology is way behind the enemies, and so this new shiny, let's say, company is coming around with this shiny thing from a training ground right by the border, and they run from the troops and they kind of meet up with Independent Group 8. Yeah, there he gets his new mecha. Only he can use because the system is accustomed to his brain waves or something. But he kind of gets, let's say, a technical manager because only she can activate this new mecha. Because she activated it and his brainwaves are connected to this shiny mecha.
Yeah, essentially to cover that real quick, upon its first boot, it essentially looks at the person who's activating it and graphs a lot of its functions based off what it's skimming off their server. So she essentially stuck the ignition key in the thing, and before it finished starting up, she had him switch places with her because he was at least a soldier who had possible combat experience. So after the machine finished its boot up, it kind of grafted its runtime functions to him. So she serves as the ignition key to this thing, and he's the actual pilot. So they're kind of like a two-person team, but one person only really has to provide the key, while the other person has to get used to this new type of machine that's never been done before.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because in the first arc this is very, very badly displayed how both of them are interconnected. But when they run from the enemy to, let's say, a standoff point to stop the enemy force, yeah, he kind of gets to know the new machine that has a new type of control, which is controlled more not by hand and feet, more like by his brain, by his thoughts. Yeah, there it gets interesting. It's like the first arc is completely like, well, let's retreat. We don't know what to do. Let's retreat. And after that, they kind of get into the personal stories of individual characters, which is really interesting in a way, because his sister is missing in action. Well, was killed in an accident. Yeah, before the war. And now he kind of wants to know what and why that happened. And yeah, in the first arc, nothing really important happened. And I think we're currently in the third or fourth arc, depending on how one watches that. At first, it was really generic. And at the first OreAni, it was like we had 3 episodes, and all these 3 episodes were like, well, it just cries for being generic, and only shows that is pretty decent in the latest and after episode 4. That is really decent. It's really solid. The art and soundwork is quite good. The story is coming along mid-season and half season. Yeah. Nick, continue, please.
Okay. Yeah. I actually kind of agree. At first, it seemed like a rather cut and dry mecha animation that at the time I said reminded me a lot of this video game title called front mission. And ultimately, by the mid-season standpoint, we come to find out that the company who developed this new mech that they were going to give to this army is not necessarily the masterminds behind the mech itself. There's a master company behind them who's attempting to seemingly sell to both sides of the army. They just sold to the losing side first. And we have two companies that emerge operating under very different means. And partway through the series, the robot has this function that's not introduced, but at least for the first time showcased, that can read how well connected the person is to the machine, and that connection value is what becomes a shocking factor to a lot of these characters. It's oh, your numbers are raking up high there. This is craziness, and a lot of it's emotional outburst. But as Tripley was kind of saying, in the series we actually did find out about an earlier prototype that wasn't like this current machine, but possibly from the same company, and he potentially had a family member involved in the incident that occurred. And at least from this season standpoint, we are given a tidbit of knowledge that seems to hint that that is still a fatal flaw with the current machine that the main character may be in. And these guys are potentially trying to rush certain aspects of the war before certain history repeats itself. But this show really did warm up pretty well, in my opinion. It had surprising moments of moe-ness that came out that I kind of enjoyed. And the characterization that they started exploring really made me glad that I stuck with it. It might not be the most worthwhile thing around. It actually did seem to have a few budget issues here and there. One of my particular favorites that I was telling them before this hangout got underway is we had some characters meet up in a bar, and there is a noticeably horribly drawn stool that a main character is walking towards. And when we hear a sound effect of him pulling the bar stool back, just before we're cut to this view of this nice cabinet. And we're looking at this cabinet while we hear this chair get pulled back and this guy sit down, and then we see the scene of him sitting down. So it kind of has some notable moments of just being rushed. Another one of my particular favorites is one time when we were panning the character to the side, his shoulder was kind of cut off a little bit, like cropped out, so his shoulder wasn't completed. But I mean, it is a fairly decent title that, I'm kind of glad that I stuck with it, and it might not be the most promising thing around, but it wasn't as cut and dry as it initially seemed, and that's what made me a little bit happier with the series. So I'm still watching to resolution, and I kind of hope there's a big kick in the end, but as we said, the end point has not yet to be reached. So
Yep. I kind of still, yeah. The hairstyles kind of made me watch this show, and I didn't regret it at all up to now. The hairstyles are kind of drawn very nicely throughout the show. If you like hairstyles, watch the show. Yeah, I have to agree with mostly with Nick. Yeah, I kind of like the show, and it's just coming right along, and yeah, if you like a little bit of mecha and a little bit of shiny new hairstyles, come along, watch the show. Skip the first, well, don't skip the first 4 episodes, but don't stop after the first, the second, and the third episode. Start watching completely the right way after the third episode, and you will be rewarded with an anime that is kind of really decent. Really decent.
So, are you trying to say that just because I only watched one episode, I didn't get the full
Yeah,
of this
that,
title?
that is his case. That is his case.
It
Well,
might not be
nothing.
everyone's cup of tea, but it's surprisingly better than its few couple premiering episodes. I will admit. So, like, don't judge a book by its first 2 episodes in this case. And if you're not liking where it's opening up to, then by all means discontinue it. But I'm just saying, as an avid watcher who stuck with it, I did get a little bit of so far a good bit of joy out of the series. So.
all right. Thank you guys for sharing that.
Watch this.
No. Let's go ahead and move on to the next title. Let's see here. What do we have?
Oh well.
Haru Ride?
All right. Yeah.
Hmm.
We're right.
This actually seemed like something I would really enjoy watching, but for some reason I didn't watch it.
I was surprised by it. In all honesty, it really kind of blew me away. I loved its animation. Not the most detailed, but with a hint of like whimsicalness to it that kind of made it all worth it. And this kind of raw like spirit that it had. While not filled with angst, was a much similar emotion that just made me enticed in the stories and watch these characters as they're going through their various tidbits of high school drama. And it's hard for me to summarize what this show is primarily about, because it's purely slice of life with just a lot of school, not so much something of the like nature. I really liked the expressions of the characters. I liked the amount of growth, not growth, but they kind of have a little bit of forced growth where, insert really turning point scene here, and obviously a character is going to have to change. And I don't know. I really like the characters. I really like the whimsical animation it had, and I was just surprised by how enticed I was with it for being just like a slice of life. Normally, most slice of lives tend to deal with an aspect of moeiness, like there has to be something attractive about school life, and this one really just delved into its own story and kind of had a more classical take at school life.
So I do have a quick question because this show seemed like it was going to be kind of like a, what do you call that? Kimi no Todoke or Tonari no Kaibutsu-kun.
Oh.
Those types of shows. That's the kind of feeling I had when I first was watching it.
The
Would you say
art
it's
is
similar to those?
definitely evocative of Kimi ni Todoke, I would say. Just the sort of pastel color palette that's used, almost screen tone-like frames that the characters have. Everything seems very peaceful and fluffy, I guess.
While it may be fluffy seeming, what the characters kind of experience, if I were to explain what this anime goes throughout the high school life, followed by our main character, Futaba-chan, I believe she's called? Yes. Has this childhood friend, Mabuchi Ko, who has a name that's different. Something happened, and a parental divorce kind of thing, and he ended up reverting back or taking up a different last name than he had when she met him in junior high, I guess. I don't know if they're in junior high or high school, actually. I didn't pay much attention, my bad. But, I mean, this is pretty much all the startup romance that typically close friends go through, of who, when you discover that, oh, hey, we like the same person, what are we going to do? We don't want each other to be unhappy, but we both, are trying to go out with this guy, or at least want to go out with this guy. It has a lot of that raw, high school romance concept into it. It's woven into its whole story. So that's mainly what you're going to be running into. That's the whole point of the story. And
what about you, Tripoli? What did you think of this show?
This is no Kimi no Toroke. This is no Tonari no Kai Taikutsu. This is, I think, I would compare it to Okami that's airing right now, but it's more of a normal JoJo show without with a little bit more of an adult touch. Yeah. And I don't think the animation is really that good either. The art is lacking quite a lot, and the animations do too. There are a few scenes that are really, let's say, awesome in a way because you get emotionally attached to characters, and these scenes are just portrayed pretty good in the manga, and they adapted it to the anime. And I like that. But the anime overall is, lacking in a way from the adoption of the manga.
right, and well, I'm not quite sure how the manga got out, but I did just kind of want to clarify that I wasn't necessarily talking about the animation or the animator style, but just the character design of the characters and the particular style in which the scenes were drawn. What really drew me to this title is not like fluid animation, not really well done scenes, but the detail is probably what you would expect from maybe like a shoujo show. I'm not sure. Just
well, this is a shoujo show more
Right.
going into the, let's say, a shonen direction. But it's mostly still being a shoujo show with its problems. But these problems seem, well, deeper than most of other shows. Let's just say that the main love interest in the show kind of has its problems. What my problem with that is, these problems can or are just, well, the other characters kind of interact with them and they kind of try to fix them. But on one point, they kind of really fix them, let's say, 10 minutes. That's quite fast paced. Once upon a time, that's a little bit too fast for me. I must say the art style of the show is really something you don't see too often. It's really, let's say, non-cartoonish, more realistic, but still you have the manga feel overall. I don't particularly have an image in mind, but there are still overreactions, like, well, the eyes don't pop out, but they kind of seem like, well, they're just drawn white, and around them is like an outline, many outlines in black, and the mouth is just really big. And you think, wow, that really fits the scene. And that's how the emotions in this anime are completely portrayed in a funny way, and in a way the watcher really wants it.
Yeah, alongside developing relationships, however, I neglected to mention it focuses on the making and breaking of friendships in a fairly realistic, dramatic dramatic means, but that's kind of what made it interesting. Is with everything it done, for all the stories, the arcs of friendship and possible early romance that it is woven, drama was always involved. So it was never a lighthearted take on, oh, this just happened. It was, this scene had weight to it. So
I gotta ask, I haven't seen this, but in comparison to Kimi ni Toroke, I remember Kimi ni Toroke, like the first series of that, uh, was kind of about like friendships and side characters, and then the second series of that was very much focused on like the main girl and the main love interest, like the boy and the girl. And I sort of pigeonhole like those sort of shoujo school romance drama type shows into one of those two things. Like, is it mostly about side characters, or is it just like laser focused on just like this like the boy and the girl?
my take on is, I'd say it's mostly between the boy and the girl. That's where a majority of the scenes happen because she is the protagonist of the show. While the side characters do get their own stories at times, the weight of what happens probably happens between the girl and the main character. We have developing feelings from a side character, but they kind of constantly worry who's getting ahead of the other, but we still only see the perspective of the main girl, so that's who we're going to have most of the scenes weighted towards. But they do a fairly good job of covering both topics at the same time, in my opinion.
Well, these both of the shows have different aspects. As Kimi no Todoke is a monthly manga release, worth about 50 to 60 pages, and Blue String Ride, Aroha Ride, kind of has, I think, 25, and it's a weekly release. As Kimi no Todoke is focusing on the personal drama in the friend circle of this certain person, how right is certain is currently focusing on the personal drama between the, let's say, main love interest and the main character. This spoiler may change in the later course of the show when a second season is appearing.
Yeah, potentially. I also do want to mention, though, however, that while that is the main focus of the show is not necessarily about one romance in particular. There are a handful that appear, and while the main character and her main love interest gets the most focus, that's not the only story there is here. So there are at least two other outlets that are being depicted throughout time.
Let's say both of the other love relationships are foreshadowing to deeper things that will and could be investigated when a second season appears, or when someone reads the manga, which is quite funny. Overall.
So, Triply, would you say that you would recommend the manga over the anime?
Let's just say, if you like watching anime, just watch anime, and but you don't have, well, you have to read the manga after watching the anime. So the manga is a little bit more detailed on the problems occurring, but overall, I would recommend reading the manga over watching the anime. As for the art, it's a little bit more, let's say, fitting overall, more detailed.
All right, shall we move on?
Yeah, I think that's
Yes.
a possibility.
So I can't remember. Did we do dramatical murder last week?
Yes.
Yes.
Did you guys have anything to add to that, Jessica or Tripoli? No?
No, I haven't watched any of that.
Okay, next would be the
Nobunaga. Concept.
Nobunaga, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Nobunaga.
Naga.
Well, it looks like I don't have a screenshot. Oh, wait, here it is. Shh. That was that CG type show, right?
Yeah.
Yes. Heavy
Yeah.
amounts of CG, which I think actually really worked for it. The characters didn't look too abstract, and that really allowed them to focus on some nice background pieces. So, the characters, while obviously CG looking, had some fairly decent animation to them and some really nice backgrounds in this series. And all in all, I was pleasantly surprised by it upon resolution, which I don't even know. It seems like there should be a season 2 coming out, but this is one I don't think where they announced it. But we essentially get a resolution as like a little bit of a spoiler as to as we explained potentially in the first OreAni summary video, um, a character has time slipped from present day to the Sengoku Warring States period, or I think that's what it's called. No, I don't. Anyway. My history is not top
Nick,
notch. Huh?
I just have to mention, is there any way to be a spoiler for this show since there's like so many Nobunaga titles out there already? They almost have the same type of thing happening.
I mean, well, in this show, essentially, I'm going to ruin it now. As concerto hints, there are essentially two Nobunagas. So I don't know many shows that really have that element going for them. So there is some amount of uniqueness here. But anyway, so as our character has time slipped, we actually come into the series. He has taken the place of the Nobunaga who has essentially run away from his responsibilities, being a rather sickly, frail individual. And our character, who is a rather slacker throughout high school, has a very rudimentary knowledge about stuff. And he has to take over this role as Nobunaga, and he has this really whimsical attitude about it. He's very happy-go-lucky, and he doesn't know his history very well. Despite in the series, he goes back to where he time slipped and finds his textbook on Japanese history, and there's massive amounts of time that happens in this series. Between an episode, sometimes you'd have a period longer than 9 months just gets spanned right then and there, and as he's living the life of Nobunaga, as eccentric as he is, without trying to fit in at all. It's kind of funny because his slackish nature really rises to the top, and as he's reading his history book, he realizes he has just done a lot of the moments in history that he's just, despite having a manual in front of him. It's very much an old outlandish tale and we actually do find out that more people from possible modern-day society has slipped to the past. It's not just this one character. He has multiple encounters with other people who have come from different backgrounds as well. The exact time frame is not too specific, but I don't know. I really liked where this series went. I didn't think I'd like it from its initial episode, but by its resolution, I was really impressed by it, and it would almost be obscure to say that the ending was so good that it probably carried me through, sticking with it all through and through, because the CG tale just didn't seem to grab my... And again, as you said, Nobunaga, how many times has Nobunaga been done? But when that ending hit, it just seemed like I had to watch a few more episodes just so I could get some of that more ending without, rewatching the same episode over and over again just for the ending.
Oh yeah. Nobunaga Concerto could be the anime that is totally underrated on everywhere. I don't know. There are so few people watching this currently, or were watching this, that I thought, wow, I'm privileged to watch this show. Um, it's quite good overall. I would give it really high rating, and I think I did on my Anime Talk review. Um, I wanted to, let's say, people should have a look at this. If you don't like the CGI, don't watch this because the CGI is really, really not top notch and really not the best. But it's watchable in a way. Especially if you like the elements that Nobunaga is coming up with throughout the show. This is just a great show. I mean, we've got Sean joining us again.
I just want to ask if it's a comedy. It sounds like Bill and Ted or something.
Well,
It has
kinda
comedic
kinda
moments, but it also sometimes it has comedy laced into its serious story. Like stuff is happening in this. Like states are warring, battles are being fought,
Yeah.
and that random nature, that happy-go-lucky nature of our character shines through. They'd be talking strategies for how to take on this next war, or local rumors will be happening, and he'll just, like, literally word for word, this guy, when he meets people, he'll say, like, they'll introduce themselves and they'll give this really historic name, and he'll go right away, "Oh, that sounds famous."
Yeah.
And these guys are looking at him like, "Oh, okay."
I kind of know that name.
Yeah.
I like
So,
that.
and he does this like multiple times. So I mean, while stuff is happening, you do have random outbursts of comedy. So comedy is a very intrinsic thing to the series, while not the main head of it either. So I think that's what really made it refreshing, in my opinion, was it wasn't too over the top with it, and it really fit his character type that they established. So it wasn't too out of place at times.
It's lamentable that the CGI is so bad because the story's really pretty funny and interesting, but the characters look wooden, the facial expressions are limited.
Mhm.
It turned me off of the series, and so I was only able to stomach the first episode because of the colossally awful CGI.
Mhm.
I wish that it had been just a 2D one, because I think it would have been enjoyable otherwise.
I must say I've enjoyed the CGI because I could concentrate on the backgrounds a lot more. And the backgrounds are,
The backgrounds are really well done.
yeah, they're like, wow, they're like, well, I remember Red Data Girl, and the backgrounds of Red Data Girl were awesome, and this one is maybe even more awesome because every background is just so detailed. Like, wow.
So that's where their budget went then.
Yeah, essentially. They got this like rudimentary CG going, and they went, okay, so, and again, that it really kind of shines in the ending. In my personal opinion, I like all the various effects going on in it, and I almost wish they used some of the ending effects in the main series, because the ending depicts moments of like soldiers riding out to war, and they will commonly shadow them out. So without that facial definition, without that goofiness of being obviously blocky CGI, they can swoop through the battlefield and just kind of, speed time, slow time, just dramatic swoops of camera angle really effortlessly. And I kind of wish some of that was brought out into the series, but that didn't make the series bad at the same time. it made for an actual interesting, like I really do enjoy this ending a lot.
This
The series really didn't have an opening, actually. They focused on the ending.
it didn't have an opening,
No.
but the ending is really top notch. It was one of the best endings in the whole season, I think. It's really epic
Yeah.
in a way. Um,
Do you think the show had an educational bent? Like, was it trying to educate the
No.
audience?
No,
about
no,
history?
no, no.
it had more.
It had
like,
because
it
they
had-
referenced history, but where I say it's not necessarily educating, I would say if you were an educated person who was really familiar with Japanese history, I mean, as much as the typical American knows, like, presidential history, they kind of parody moments, and I don't mean parody in the sense of make fun of it, but they kind of contrast actual history and go a different route at times. So, I mean, in a sense, it's like if you're watching, you know, our presidential history, like, start to lay out, or this one moment out of U.S. history, and this guy kind of stumbling through this time frame and getting the job done, but being different, noticing those moments of contrast probably is a value to the story that I just don't necessarily have because, you know, these names are being thrown around and it's not a history I've studied. But I can imagine that if history was being subtly rewritten and battles taking place in places they shouldn't have, and the main character going, huh, I wonder why that is, would probably provide some form of entertainment.
I think this show was well delivering more education than any other Nobunaga show we had in the last 3 to 4 years. That's certainly a fact. I think we had one with girls and lollies, then we had Nobunaga Gun, which was terrible in that aspect, and we had Nobunaga the Fool, which had the same Nobunaga voice, which was really disturbing in the first two or three episodes, which was Nobunaga the Fool coming around, or the Nobunaga from Nobunaga the Fool being in that show is kind of really disturbing. But I think we said that Nobunaga the Fool was not that bad. Someone said that in the last OreAni I was in. But Nobunaga Concerto is delivering a lot more education to me than any other show of the Nobunaga aspect.
Yeah. And again, it does provide some information to me as a viewer who has very limited understanding of this all. But I do kind of stick by my statement of if you knew actual history and saw how he was doing things a little bit differently, that would just be something you would innately call in yourself, no, you're not supposed to do that here right now. So having that experience as a viewer might just even boost the series further. I don't know the Japanese response to this show. I would be interested in checking out its sales or just general ratings or forums that they talked about it.
A live-action television series and a live-action film. So I don't know if this is positive or anything.
Alright, so that was Nobunaga. Let's go ahead and go to the next title, which I don't think anyone here has watched.
Oh.
Season 2. I do know it's continuing on, right? This season?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So hopefully Albert can join us next time. We can just do an end review for that. So let's go ahead and go to this title you guys keep on talking about.
No, we don't. I do.
What is this?
Okay, so I'm just going to take the gun on this one.
Or Tokyo Ghouls, you guys always mention this title.
I do. Okay, I did. So the story behind this was...
Wait.
I don't even know if it is...
up there.
Hang on.
Puripira?
Puripara. So essentially, Jessica made a post about watching Tokyo Ghoul and then watching this series, and the amount of contrast that the two had kind of like fried her brain. So I took it upon myself to try to watch both episodes side by side to reproduce that feeling kind of weekly, and I kind of abandoned that stratagem and just kind of watched them as they came out, just because I was already invested in watching it. So again, Puripara actually is a little surprising. I'm not going to say, hey, everybody, go out there and watch it, because the first few episodes are kind of mind-numbingly bleh. A lot of nonsensical stuff happens in it, but essentially it almost has like a what is it? Sunrise does idol shows. It almost felt like it could have come from them. Like it's truly not that bad once you're 6 episodes in, I'd say. And essentially, much like, I don't know if we discussed it yet, but there's essentially like Japan has arcade booths that have like games that you go and have like progressions with. Like I know we did like racing games here in the US with that, where you get a little card and you can like keep your stats on your car or something. And I know there was a horse racing one like that. But essentially Japan has all these like little arcadey booths dropped where you go to play a game. And this is an animation that kind of publicizes or is an adaptation of that realm. And while I have some core issues with it, the content it produces is not bad once you get used to it, but you have to get used to it. You can't just take this thing seriously. Essentially, there's an idol-centric booth that exists, and in this show, the booth still exists. I think we had a show that nobody watched where that happened too last season, called like Drag Calais or something, like the Dragon Collector, where like the booth itself became like a part of the animation, which normally they kind of skip past that whole integration of the actual arcade machine with the series. Normally it's not depicted, but anyway. So essentially, at some point in a young girl's life, a card for this machine somehow randomly appears. Like, it's not sent in the mail or anything, it just appears in your everyday life, and that's like your access to this machine, which almost has this like VR sense of it takes you to another world somehow, based around idolism. Now, while this is an extremely gimmicky show, again, with moments that just don't make sense, the end, it's a 2-core show. It's still going to be running on, despite Tokyo Ghoul ending, and I'm going to stick with it, because I'm already this invested with it. We're basically at the 2nd core of it right now, so it's centered around a much younger cast. It's aimed at a much younger audience. I will get that out of the way. I don't know why I didn't say that earlier. Holy crap. It's definitely not your high school series. And essentially these girls go to this machine and cross over into this idol world and try to make a name for themselves. They actually have like trending popularity, and a lot of people don't actually participate just to be idols. They go to support idols, which this is where one of the main conflicts I have with this series are. It's purely girls. Like, in any idol industry, usually you have like a male fandom that's going crazy and just like throwing gobs of money and buying like too many CDs just to get points to support their idols. In this one, it seems like it's a for the girls, by the girls kind of a thing. Like I think a few families have a younger brother kind of character, and sometimes in the background of the school you might see some male character, but there's like no male protagonist in it at all. So it is definitely a shoujo show aimed at a gimmicky young crowd. And at first I really hated it because in its ending, they had a live action music video that was just playing with like horrible crop shots of random stuff, and I hated it, and I hated the song, and I hated the one song they kept singing, and then they got a second song, and they kind of flipped, not even between the one or the two. They kind of stuck with the song, but then the songs kind of grew on me, and I started liking the series, and I started kind of liking what the characters were going through and doing. And it's really just a series that I'm going to stick with and watch because it's mediocrely amusing, and again, I've stuck with it this far, so I'm going to see it through resolution. And it's kind of funny because the second core of it, like I said, started with a new opening animation and a new closing. And when I got to that closing, I was like, don't do a music video. Don't do a music video. And gosh darn it, there is a second music video in that closing. But it's a very lighthearted show. Lots of glitter, lots of, as Jessica was kind of saying over there, cotton candy animation on steroids. Sorry to use your text segments there, Jessica, but
No problem.
But there's moments of CG woven into it alongside the 2D animation. Whenever you do the concert scenes, that's done in CGI, and otherwise you have 2D animation. So, I mean, I probably was a little messy explaining this thing, but I guess I should just ask, are we okay with this explanation, or does anyone actually want to ask anything of this?
Tank does.
Let me see, what was I going to say? So, we were having some side discussions. People can't see these, but I was kind of wondering if it was moe or kawaii. But
And if you will dress up.
Again,
it's good for children, but
yes.
and I don't say that that's a bad thing because I like My Little Pony. Just gotta get that confession out right there. But this one doesn't really have the charm of other children's shows. It seems purely commercial, and that it's designed to sell a product. Now I don't know if there's a Puripara merchandise, but this show seems like it's an infomercial for those toys and things.
Yeah, I mean, it has its own plot, and I would say that, again, it's aimed at a much younger demographic. I'd almost say much like Gundam Build Fighters is super shonen.
Mm.
This is like super young, not adolescent. This is like grade schooler shoujoism. It's a show for a younger viewer base, but I mean, much like we have viewers who watched Gundam Build, excuse me, Build Fighters and said, "Oh, this is actually pretty decent." You know, Puripara is not necessarily, "Oh yeah, go watch it. It's like Gundam Build Fighters. You will like it." But I'm just trying to get out there that while it's aimed at a younger demographic, there's a lot of enjoyment to be had for a potential older viewer base. Like if you paid attention to its story, if you just got into what these characters were going through, it's kind of like a Disney movie in a sense of, you know, Cars may have been meant for kids, but a lot of adults who ended up watching it said, you know, this is surprisingly good. And while it's not quite Disney Advent level, that's all I'm trying to iterate, is while it's aimed at a younger view base, there's some moral to the story that some older viewers might find a little charming. But not worth it to sit through and watch it. Just you know, I'm going to get this moral enjoyment from the series. No, that's not worth it.
well, you almost had me sold on watching this, but then I don't know. You just kind of started with that last comment.
Again, I'm not saying for anyone to go out there and watch this series. I'm just saying for someone who has watched it originally for the contrast. It ended up not being as bad. Like if it stuck with what it was doing in episodes like 1 through 3 or 4, and like consistently did that all the way through, I probably would have dropped it and just said, yeah, not worth it. But after you get past the initial unrealisticness of it, it doesn't really delve too further into additional unrealisticness, and the that it introduces becomes so blended into the background that they just don't quite stand off as much of a conflict anymore. They don't necessarily rub your face in it as much.
Okay, so one thing I just really want to say is, I noticed that the people who subtitle this also subtitle quite a few other shows that are, I would say, pre-teen titles, like Yokai Watch and stuff. So I remember watching another title from them that was, again, very targeted at a younger audience. I mean, the kids were all maybe middle school, elementary, but it wasn't like your typical anime you see with middle schoolers. They're actually little kids, and they're doing little kid things that, I mean, it's really nice and clean, but it's really generated for people who haven't gotten into their teens. Let's go ahead and move on, though.
To
Which we don't have that many titles left, so we're almost done. Yeah, Momo-Kyun. I've actually noticed quite a bit of Momos this season.
Oh my god!
Momo is Peach.
This show.
This
season, I've actually noticed that Peach has been introduced quite often.
Wait, has anyone watched it? Because
I watched the first episode of Momo-Kyun Sword.
Good.
And basically, the one word I would use to describe it is boobs.
No, it's very Peach-centric. Gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. This show did kind of focus on bust, and for the most part, that's all they really focused on. For the most part, there was this one episode where they kind of delved into Pantsu fandom, but we're not going to talk about that. It was a humorous episode, and it actually followed an Idol episode. The Idol is actually kind of funny. Anyway, okay, so Momo-Kyun Sword, as we kind of said from the get-go, followed the story of, yeah, I know Albert helped me with that one, and he's not here this time. Yes, Momotaro, and it had a lot of adaptations of the characters done, but it kind of took its own battler series, and this series is unique, but not necessarily good. It's rather light-hearted combat. While it does have some semi-decent looking action scenes, and they're not overly the top great, you know, we essentially run into this main character called Momo, or Peach, as you can see in her kind of little icon there. Everything about her screams Peach. The hairband, or the hair decorations commonly take the shape of a peach. Her bust line is in the shape of a peach. Sometimes she transforms. She soul fuses, kind of like DBZ fusion hostile with someone. And whenever that goes sour, there's like a peach atom cloud, a mushroom cloud in a peach shape. So there's like peaches everywhere woven around this character. She's met by these 4 gods who help her on this journey to collect this 1,000-year-old peach shard thing, which ogre demons, the celestial people, and even humans alike all seek the power for whatever their reasons. And all I really got to say is, this series is not the most coherent. Every episode takes place in a different prefecture in, like, Japan, and they won't necessarily explain the whole adventure that they had. Sometimes it starts in the middle of combat that makes you think you missed an episode, as in my case one time. I literally thought I missed an episode and went back and downloaded and went, no, wait, I saw this episode. What's going on here? They jumped all over the place, and they covered areas of Japan, and I mean, they didn't even really get into the historic parts of the prefectures. They just, you know, we need an excuse to have these characters here this time. And it's kind of weird because while Momo and the 4 goddesses were kind of combating the ogres, we have this ogre princess, Onihime. Onihime, get it? Ha ha ha. Who kind of befriends our character, almost to a point of rivalry. They're not necessarily buddy-buddy, but, you know, they are rivals in the sense of they compete with each other, and at times when they happen to bump into each other when they're not in mission modes, they had that, oh hey, let's be friends at the hotspot episode because we're not collecting shards and we just happen to meet here. During combat one time, a memento of the main character Momo was battle was lost in the fray of battle, and this character was upset that she abandoned the battle instead of focusing on their rivalry, but in the end actually kind of helped her regain her lost memento. You know, these opposing factions are kind of helping each other out at times. So it was very lighthearted in that sense, but the story wasn't coherent, the story wasn't that great, and the focus of each story greatly, changed episode to episode. And while it did really reach an resolution, and it kind of did have story that wasn't necessarily the great, I'm just saying, it did resolve things, it did have a resolution. It's just, at times when you have a combat-centric, here's a new foe that's introduced as one of the 3 Demon Lord type things, we'd have combat episodes, and then we'd have, as I said, there was an idle episode, which was that one was actually kind of funny, because we had samurai-esque soldiers who fawned over the 4 goddesses she traveled with, and what actually made it kind of funny was that was like medieval idolism startup. I mean, these guys had that steel armor, that plated armor, that they would draw the faces, they would buy face-painted armor plates of their favorite respective idol goddess, and these guys would host, a concert, and stuff would happen. And almost at the end of every episode, like I said, when Momo fusion has with somebody, something happens that makes her consciousness go unstable, and the fusion is forcibly separated, leaving her in kind of tattered clothing. And that's pretty much as servicey as the series gets. Was few bouncing bust lines and a bit of tattered clothing service, but it wasn't really over the top with it at the same time. It wasn't always revealing skin. It just had its subtle moments of what it did, and it never carried on too far with it. So that is Momo Sword.
Thank you for that. I don't know if anyone's going to go out there and watch this, but
right.
If you do, let us know if Nick was telling the truth about the fan service or not, because from episode 1, it doesn't seem like he's telling the truth.
Peaches. Plot.
Let's see here. What do we have? We're going to give one more title out there a chance.
No.
Baby Steps, I think, is what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, Baby Steps. I don't think I have the screenshot for it. Oh, wait,
You
there
don't
it is.
have to.
Baby
Oh.
Steps.
Well,
Baseball.
Baby Steps. I haven't watched the anime in entirety, but this one just don't even download. Don't even download. As we know, sports anime are largely incoming right now, and we know that Baby Steps is maybe a tennis kind of sports anime. But this show was so under budget. It is a full season, I think, and it was so under budget. It is so slow paced. It is slow. Yeah, kind of. Yeah, I think it's the worst. Could be the worst anime this season. Even let's say. This kind of art style is, or artwork that was done in this anime is so 2008, just in HD.
The mohawk. Oh my gosh, the main character's little mohawk thing drove me crazy.
You mean his little rooster thingy?
Yeah, I don't know what that was, but every time I saw it, I wanted to take a comb and, straighten it out for him. It was, very
Oh
irritating.
gosh.
Sorry, Tripley, please continue.
Yeah, it's just well, rage quit on the show. I've watched the first 5 episodes, and that was, I think, where he got to his first tennis matches, and these matches just are so badly animated. It's a sports anime, and you kind of need to follow the ball, and they kind of need to run, and these running animations are so badly made.
I have
So,
to say, it
hmm?
it was very more realistic than the other tennis show I saw, The Prince of Tennis.
Yeah, I think that's the case. But Prince of Tennis is a lot older too. It has a different aspect of that. And currently, Baby Steps is just someone wanting to become a professional. I think. Also, he wants at first he wants to play tennis because he needs to do some sports. After a while, he was like, "Well, let's invest a little bit more time into tennis." Um, I don't. Yeah, the pace was so slow. They didn't get to the case when he goes for training to America, but that's another case. I think they captured only, well, 30 to 40 chapters of the manga right now. That is really, really slow paced in some aspects. Yeah.
All right. Go to go to the next title.
Watch
I'm sorry, but I actually enjoyed it. I'm sorry, Tripley.
What?
I found it enjoyable. It was kind of fun. I don't know why. No, it's not something I'd say go out and watch. But as it was coming out, I found myself checking out episodes every once in a while. I mean, this is okay.
Well, if you enjoyed it, try reading the manga, and you will enjoy it a lot more because it just feels more correctly with the drawings in place and a higher grade of quality. This will be a lot better. I don't think this Baby Steps would fit as a good anime, and it didn't. That's what I think.
Alright. Well, let's go ahead and do the last title. We still have quite a few other titles out there. Just going to mention them really quick. Kudo Senshin Gundam, Francesca Strange Shin, Mahou Shoujo Tensen, which I think is still continuing on. Haikyuu.
No, Tyson's finished.
Oh yeah, that was the end of the 2 quarter, right?
Yes, end of
Shonen Hollywood, Sengoku, Basada, Hamatora Ri, Kuroshitsuji. I'm surprised. I thought a lot of people loved that first title that came out, or the first time it came out, that no one in our group gave it a chance at all.
I wonder why.
Let's go past the new thing. There's just quite a few little things out there, but the one we're going to give was the end of a second core from last season, the M3. No one else watched this either except for Nick.
No, I had a friend.
This is Nick's special moment here.
Special moment.
No,
you actually compared it to RJ Valen earlier, and you didn't even spell RJ Valen right. You horrible, horrible person. But in a sense, you're really right. The two series are actually kind of similar in the sense of they have moments of low budget, and they are somewhat mech-centric. Now, while they have very different backgrounds, actually, I think both series have a similar charm. Whereas Maho Senso has a character to kind of development spin, this series really goes back and focuses on the psyche as the explanation of the lightless realm gets explained. So, and it does get explained, woohoo. But this will be a very kind of spoiler-heavy discussion. So, you know, I'm just gonna, you know, just get that out of the way. So, spoilers for M3. If you want to know what the whole point of this was, if you want to know how it ends without watching it, you can look here. I'll be talking about it. So essentially what we found out was the main scientist, who was like kind of the productive head of this, had a thesis at the beginning of his career that humans were capable of almost telepathic thought and can relay certain feelings to each other. And he really wanted to do a research paper basically on that and have funds and be government funded to have development on that. To which most military generals and other scientists alike pretty much laughed at his whole presentation, saying, you know, how could modern day telepathy happen? Well, essentially, he was onto something, as there's a whole island of people who exhibit that very trait, who stay very isolated. I like to say isolated for some... Anyway, isolated from the rest of the world, and for kind of good reason. They don't really mesh well with people being able to read what they're thinking on the surface, if you will. So, early in this guy's science, he wanted to adapt it to a mechanized interface, being able to control machines through a thought process. Kind of like how we have those Nekomimi ears right now, and kind of that little obstacle course you can kind of navigate based on like brain impulses. He was working on a whole control interface, and he got to that island. A islander who left the island saw something in his vision and wanted it to come to fruition. She wanted her island to be worldwide. She didn't want to have just this civilization stay locked to this island. She did want the whole world to be able to exhibit this trait too. So she takes him to the island, to which he conducts many inhumane experiments, which appalls the islanders because he is in such a rush to get this out there and to analyze every aspect of what is possible through this thought telepathy. He drives the islanders crazy, and they wish to basically purge the world of his sin, and the lightless realm is their way of doing that. They actually have a culture that is what is supposed to reset and remove sin from an area. So the lightless realm is centered around this being, which was called the corpse, and he housed essentially the part for the whole field in existence. Now, the islanders who brought this lightless realm to the main city had to literally young children cross the island to come to the city and establish this lightless realm. In the process, they actually made childhood friends with the entire main cast of pilot characters. Now, when they were kids, they all had fun and games hanging out in what was started as the lightless realm, but when things started getting kind of serious and everything, inorganic, organic material started fading away in this black metallic rust, as children, they got scared and essentially ran away, leaving a single person behind. Literally, a single islander was left behind as the childhood cast of pilots and the other two islanders that accompanied this one person left. Upon leaving the realm, they had a bout of unexplained amnesia from the contrast of the leaving the realm and returning. The realm could mess with one's psyche. That's actually what was said. In the series, we're introduced to these pilots who have to try to work on their telepathy skill so they could retain sanity while in this realm. It really messes with one's sense of direction, and it really plays tricks on the mind as it is. So they need to be linked to another person to stay sane, which our scientists developed. When people started developing that black metal rust, he would put them in a point of stasis, and have them become a part of what eventually was 3 machines. As we were introduced to the Argent, or the Shinigami as the characters were calling it, there essentially was 2 other machines that were made, the Sable, and I really can't remember the last one, I'm sorry.
Oh, I do have a question, though. So the silver-haired kid that was kind of an evil bastard, was
Heito,
that
yeah.
because he spent too much time in the Lightless Realm, or was he always that way?
Like I said, he was in the cast of characters. Every pilot met the 3 islanders that, as they accompanied the corpse to establish the initial Lightless Realm. He was a very shy and docile kid, and all that I could say is, upon leaving the Lightless Realm, his personality did seem to warp, but he probably grew up into that mentality more so than... I think it's how the amnesia affected him that made him the way it was. It didn't necessarily morph him in, but when you have that bout of amnesia as a young, scared child, it just kind of leaves its scar on you, and that's what he became because of it. The other 2 islanders actually, for the most part, forgot the island that they came from and thought that they were normal inhabitants like the other guys. So they didn't actually remember the one person who was left behind, who was sisters with one of the pilots, which is a real big point of drama and tenacity in the story. So essentially, as people develop that rusting within themselves, the scientist would put them into a point of stasis and turn them into what he called an LIM, a limb. And he would make them a part of those machines that the people would sync with the machine, and they would get that kind of enhanced neurological function, kind of like the RJ Valen, actually. But again, the machine kind of felt like the person, because while the person was in a point of stasis, they weren't necessarily alive, but they still had the traits and memories of what they were as a person. Now, they weren't technically dead yet. And like I said, this is a very abstract series that's weird, that deals a lot with the psyche, but essentially we have characters who decide for themselves what is right. The character who is left behind has to hear the voices of the departed citizens who have fallen into the state of rust. Those are actually referred to as the, I think it was admissions or something, like as it was called. They had this weird name, I'm sorry. She was stuck in this realm with their depraved voices constantly clawing at her, and that really kind of scarred her as an individual, and she sought to purge the sin of the original cast of pilots who have left her behind to deal with all the negative emotion herself. To which a lot of our characters want to attempt to save her from this point of view or this suffering, but a couple of them have a different idea of how to do it, and that is essentially the ending conflict of the series. But you know, there were so many unexplained mysteries at first that I just kind of wanted to get it all out of the way and say this is what the series hinges on, and this is why it was kind of interesting. Almost in the same way that the RJ Valen is interesting. It had moments of pretty nice looking scenes despite having low budget elsewhere. Character conflict like crazy, and I really did enjoy the series, much like I think I will enjoy the RJ Valen. I did actually have a friend who watched this series, not like right alongside me, but you know, he watched it from start to finish, so I do think that kind of says it is at least somewhat amusing.
Is the writer for this one Mari Okada? The lady that did, the mermaid one last year.
I might be able to look it up.
Nagi no Asukara?
I'd have to like Google. Written by Mari Okada.
Okay, yeah.
Okada is the one who wrote it. But I mean, I did like the mech animation, especially when they got towards the second core. It actually had a lot of decent value to it. And that aspect of human instrumentation was there, you know. At first, the main character was confused as to why he felt that this device, this Shinigami, the Reaper as he called it, has killed before. And that was, again, the very first machine of its kind put out. It was actually inhabited by what he thought was his deceased brother. That was the LIM in that machine. And the other LIMs were actually pilot cast who have succumbed to the metal rusting, called necrometal, I believe. Yeah, that sounds right. And I did leave some things out for, you know, as spoiler intensive as that was. There are some end resoluting moments. I didn't necessarily explain anything in the final episode, but there was a surprising amount of hidden depth to the series, and I'm kind of happy that it was there. Yeah. So yeah, I'm not saying go watch it. I would be interested to see if they fix a lot of the scenes. It was actually kind of funny. The low budget scene of choice that I have from this one, our main character when he was a kid, a little bit older than when he first got the initial amnesia and started realizing he had that ability that kind of closed him off from a lot of other people because he didn't like how he could read the intrinsic thoughts of people. He thought he was abnormal for that, so he actually kind of hindered his own ability, which is a major point of discussion through like the last 3 episodes, apparently, as determined by this one character. But there was a scene where I think the brother had just he was relayed the information that the brother had just passed away, and the person who had a vested love interest in the brother character was like sobbing and hugging him as a kid, and the kid just had this horribly drawn smile. I mean, so low-budgetly drawn that I could not believe that they passed off that expression. And I thought I was going to only see that once, and I thought about commenting on that. But they keep reflecting upon that moment in episodes upon episodes. He flashes back to that moment, and it's that same scene of that goofy-looking smile. Like horribly drawn goofy-looking smile that I was like, I thought they would have touched that up by now. I'd almost be interested in seeing in the final productions if they actually do anything with that. Because it was so...
Alright. Let's see here. So that's the end of it for today, for this season. That was the summer season in 2014. Thank you guys for watching. If you did watch this far. Let's see here. As a kind of a sneak peek for you guys, I just wanted you guys to check this out. Owen Evans, I think that's what his name is, our artist that drew our background for us, has come through again to get us set up for our winter season. So please welcome us as we start probably next Sunday for the start of the winter season. Yay! Welcome to OreAni. There's our new screenshot. So, hope you guys are all excited. And we will be starting at a new time, probably around 6 o'clock p.m. Central, or what is my time zone? Central? Yeah, Central. So join us at that time, and
Wow.
help us talk about these shows. It's pretty fun getting new members out there, so be sure to join Anime Talk. We'll be out there reviewing and posting about the shows as they come out. You guys have anything less to say about the season? No?
Great. Was great. Yeah.
I guess I'll just close this up with don't watch Evangelion, whatever that show was.
Hey.
Don't
In
watch
all
the
honesty,
video.
it's pronounced like this, okay?
A bit, huh?
Huh? Huh? You want to hear it again?
Arjeboro.
Arjevalen.
She can't even say it correctly.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Okay, that's it. Thank you guys, and see you guys
Argefallen.
next week.